There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. None else could heal all our souls' diseases. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. Well, hey everybody, this is Withrow, and today we're going to learn about E-flat tuning, which is an incredibly powerful alternate tuning. What I mean by alternate is that it's not standard tuning. It's different than standard, which of course standard tuning is E, A, D, G, B, E. And all that E-flat tuning is we're just simply lowering each string by half a step, just one note down. So now the new notes will be E-flat, A-flat, D-flat, G-flat, B-flat, and E-flat. And that's all it is. Well, why in the world would we want to do that? Why would we want to basically detune our whole guitar half a step? Well, the reason is because E-flat tuning is incredibly powerful and gives, as worship leaders, it gives us a ton of options for playing all different keys very easily. So standard tuning is built for the keys of C, A, G, E, and D. And so as you've learned, or as you're learning in the 20 lesson program, if you're in that, what you're learning is different chord shapes, right? Like an E chord shape, a A chord shape, a D chord shape. And those produce these big open chords, right? You've got open strings, especially like an E chord, right? You've got open low E, B, and high E. Creates these big, lush sort of chords. And they're simple chord shapes. You're not having to do crazy stuff with your fingers. They're just like maybe 2 or 3 fingers sort of put together. And so that's easy. Well, that works for the standard keys of C, A, G, E, and D. Well, what happens when you want to play the non-standard keys, right? It doesn't mean that they're weird or different. It's just, it's harder to play open chords in standard tuning, like the keys of A-flat or B-flat or B, or D-flat or E-flat, G-flat. What about those keys? They're pretty hard to play open chords when you're in standard tuning, but when you go to E-flat tuning, they become easy. In fact, you don't have to learn any new chord shapes. You can use the same chord shapes you've already learned or are currently learning. And that makes it easy. Plus, now, whenever you encounter a chord chart that has a non-standard key, it's going to be no problem for you if you're in E-flat tuning. And of course, I'm going to show you how that all works and how easy it can be for you. Well, let's dive into tuning our guitar down to E-flat. You got to have a tuner with you. You're also going to need to have a capo, and there's a chord chart that comes with this lesson that you'll need to either print out or pop up on your screen so you can see it at the same time as you're watching this video lesson. Okay, so let's begin to tune it now. I had told you that we were going to do E-flat, A-flat, D-flat. Those are going to be the new notes that our strings are playing. But when we look at a tuner, most tuners don't have an option for displaying things in flats. It's only in sharps. So you got to understand, right, that E-flat is also the same as D-sharp. And A-flat is also the same as G-sharp. So you got to know that flat-sharp alphabet and how they go back and forth. So I'm going to be calling out the string names as we do that. Do this with me. And turn your tuner on. I'm going to pluck my low E. It's just an E right now. And what you're going to do is just quickly tune it down half a step. You're going to look at your tuner and go down to D-sharp. You're not going to fine-tune it. You're just going to get it close. Let's go to the next one. A, we're going to take it down to G-sharp, just real quick. Of course, we're doing it quickly because we can fine-tune it later. I'm at D right now, so I'm going to go down to C-sharp. All right, my G string is going to go down to F-sharp. My B string is going to go down to A-sharp. And my high E is going to go down to D-sharp. There we go. There's our 6 strings. It's lowered now by half a step. This is going to sound really good once you get it lowered. All right, now that we've got it close, let's go ahead and start fine-tuning it again. Now remember, when you're changing the tuning on your guitar this much, you're gonna have to tune your guitar a few times because the tension's gotta get settled in. Your strings might stretch a little bit, or they're relaxing and they've gotta get settled in. There we go. There we go, they're still getting settled in a little bit. Check each one. There we go. E flat tuning, doesn't that sound awesome? Oh, I love this tuning because there's so much bass coming out of it. Just that little half step difference, I just feel like it just opens up the guitar, the sound of it. Really pretty. Well, now that we're in E flat tuning, I want to talk to you about two concepts that are going to be important to know about E flat tuning, and then we're actually going to start playing this song and learning how to practically use it. So the first concept is that whatever chord shape you're used to making with your hand in the keys of C, A, G, E, and D, whatever chord shape you're making, like let's say an E chord shape for instance, just the standard old E chord shape, whatever the name of that chord shape is, the actual chord that's ringing out of your guitar is half a step lower than the name of the chord shape. And that's simply because we've lowered our strings half a step. So if I've got an E chord shape, the actual chord ringing out is E flat. And it's the same with every other chord shape. If I play an A chord shape, some kind of A chord shape, then it's gonna be A flat that's actually ringing out. If I play a D chord shape, it's gonna be D flat. I can go over to a keyboard, play a D flat note right now, and it's gonna match this bass note. And then same with G flat, G chord shape is G flat. There's two that are special though, and that is a C chord shape and an F chord shape. You gotta remember that there are no symbols, right? Symbol letters in between B and C and E and F when we're going through our alphabet. So it's not gonna be, if you play a C chord shape, it's not gonna be C flat. It's actually what? It's actually B, because half a step lower from C is B. So even though I got a C chord shape, I'm actually hearing a B chord right now. And with an F chord shape, what's half a step lower from F? It's E, right? So this is actually an E chord right here. And that's really cool. It also works vice versa when you're looking at a chord chart. If the chord chart itself is in E flat, right, and your guitar's tuned in E flat, well then you gotta think, whatever the chord is on the chart, I've gotta play the chord shape that's half a step up from there. So if it's E flat on your chord chart, then you're gonna play an E chord shape, okay? And so that's how it works. That's the first concept. The second one is that if you're wanting to play these chord shapes that you know and love, right? But let's say you're in E flat tuning and you've been playing in all these playing all these chord charts that have these non-standard keys, but then all of a sudden you have one that is a standard key, like E, it's back to E, then all you gotta do is use your capo here. Trusty little capo, just stick it on the first fret, and that does it. You're now back in standard tuning. Right? This capo basically negates the fact that we tuned everything down half a step. It brings it back to standard tuning. So now, when I play these notes, it's E, A, D, G, B, E. Isn't that pretty cool? I think so. So all you gotta do is keep those same chord shapes. Now if I play an E chord shape, it's actual E chord. If I play an A chord shape, it's an actual A chord. A D chord shape, it's a D chord. So now you're back to standard, and that's how you can do it really easily, just using a capo, going between able to playing in standard keys like C, A, G, E, or D, and then taking your capo off and being able to play in most of the non-standard keys. The only one that we still can't play in very well using open chords, there's two of them, is the key of F and B flat. But I'm going to talk about how we can play those at the very end of this lesson. We'll go ahead and pull out your chord chart. It's a song called No Not One, which is an old hymn I grew up singing, and fell in love with this song a long time ago, and I've enjoyed modernizing it a little bit, putting it to guitar, and beautiful song here. So as you can see, this chord chart's a little different. We've got verse 1 and chorus, and that's it. And what I've done is I've split up the lines of the verse 1 and chorus into a bunch of different keys, and that's going to give us the chance to play through them all, give you the chance to really get your mind wrapped around on how we can use E-flat tuning to play in lots of different keys, both non-standard and standard keys. So the very first key you see under verse 1 is the key of E flat. And what's great about whenever we encounter a key that's written in flats rather than sharps is that all we have to do is just take the flat off, and then we just play those chord shapes. So E flat is really easy to think about. To play an E flat chord, all we got to do is play an E chord shape. Just take the flat off. To play an A flat chord, we just play an A chord shape. To play a B flat chord, we just play a B chord shape. So conceptually, that's pretty easy to think about. So let's go ahead and just play through it. This is what it sounds like. Go ahead and play with me. We're just going to do single strums. It's pretty easy. Just going to count off. Let's make an E chord shape. 2, ready, and there's not a friend like the, and then I'm going to make an A sus2 chord shape, but technically, what is the name of this chord? We've got the A sus2 chord shape, but it's technically A flat sus2. So I'm going to play that. Ready, and lowly, then back to E flat. Jesus, no, not, and then we're going to play our B sus4 chord shape here. Okay, and we're going to play that, but it's technically B flat sus4, right? So no, not one, no, not one. We end on our E chord shape, and there you go. It's as easy as that to play in E flat. So that's how you do it. And as we play through, this is going to make more and more sense as we play more and more keys. The next key is the key of D sharp. The reason I throw this in there is because every now and then you'll encounter a chord chart that's written in sharps rather than flats like this. And I want you to realize that E flat, remember, is the same exact note as D sharp. It's just written differently. One's written in the flat alphabet, one's written in the sharp alphabet. It's still the same thing. So we're still going to use the same chord shapes. It's just unfortunately a little more difficult conceptually to think about because we just can't take the sharp symbol off and play a D chord shape, because that would be wrong. It'd be like we're playing D flat rather than E flat like we're supposed to be. So you have to transpose a little more in your mind, thinking that D sharp is actually E flat, and then we use an E chord shape. So there's a few more little acrobatics you got to do in your mind for that. But let's go ahead and play through it just again, just looking at those chords, and I'll say the chord names as sharps. So 2, ready, D sharp, and there's not a friend like the G sharp, back to D sharp, no, not one, A sharp, no, not one, back to D sharp or E flat using an E chord shape. So yeah, a lot going on there, but it's actually just a pretty simple thing. You're just playing the chord shapes you already know. Let's go to the third key, key of E. Now, this is where that second concept comes into play. What if all of a sudden, you were playing an E flat and then something happens and on the fly they're like, nope, we need to bump this up so that it matches the next song. Maybe something happened and a song got switched out and you want to go for, the next song's in the key of E, and the worship leader just decides, hey, we need to have both songs back to back in the key of E. Let's bump this up a half step. Well, what do you do? I mean, if you're tuned down, you don't want to have to tune back up to standard. I mean, that's gonna be impossible to do, especially if you're playing a worship set in the middle of it. You're not gonna be able to do that. So all you gotta do is put your capo on the first fret, boom. Now you can play in E easy as pie. Just play the same chord shapes. Let's try it. Here we go, E chord shape. Now, the one thing that is a little funky is once you put your capo on, if you're used to using your dots to guide you where you're supposed to put your fingers, everything's gonna be shifted a little bit. So you're gonna have to get used to that idea that you can't necessarily follow your dots anymore if you put your capo on one. But I have gotten really used to that, and that's just because, you just do it enough and you'll get it down. So don't let that scare you or anything. Let's play our E chord shape though here, and we'll play through it. 2, 3, 4. There's not a friend like the lonely Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. There we go. And that's how you would play in the key of E, just by putting your capo on the first fret. Very good. Okay, well now let's look at our second line of our verse. And as we look at it, we can see that it's the key of G flat. Can you already tell what kind of chord shapes we're going to be using just by looking at this line? In the key of G flat, we've got G flat, B, G flat, D flat, and then back to G flat. So remember, if it's just a flat, all you do is take the flat off and then you play that chord shape. So for G flat, we're going to play a G chord shape. okay? The one that's different is the B chord. What are we gonna do for a B chord? You always gotta think that B, in this case when we're in E flat tuning, B is connected to C, right? Because you're gonna play the chord shape that's half a step up from the actual chord on the chord chart. So a B chord, we're actually gonna play a C chord shape, and in this case I'm gonna play a C add 9 chord shape. And then for D flat, of course, we're gonna just play a regular old D chord shape. So let's go through it. Key of G flat, 1, 2, 3, and none else could heal all our souls' diseases. No, not one. That D chord shape. No, not one. Back to that G chord shape. And that's how you do it. Pretty simple. G flat made easy through E flat tuning. It's really cool. Key of F sharp, just like in the first line of music, how we did E flat and D sharp, how they were the same thing. I want you to see that the key of G flat and F sharp are the exact same thing. It's just written in sharps. Okay, so let's use the same chord shapes, but I'm just gonna say the sharp names to help you get used to that concept of flats and sharps being the same thing here. And of course, the B chord's the same because there's no symbol, and it's the same in either alphabet. So here we go, 2, 3, 4. None else could heal all our souls' diseases. No, not one. C sharp, right? Which is D flat, but we're using a D chord shape. No, not F sharp. Awesome. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, that's really confusing. Yeah, I agree. It is, it is kind of confusing to be playing a G chord shape for F sharp. It's just a lot to think about. And I'm going to talk about at the end how you can help yourself in creating a chord chart that's easy to read but is in the correct key. I'll talk about that at the end. The next key is the key of G. And of course, if we're going to play something in a standard key, just take that capo, put it on the first fret. There we go. Do that with me. And then we just play the regular old chord shapes. So here we go. Everything's shifted up a little bit. So my finger now, I was used to playing a G with my middle finger on a dot, but now it's not, right? So here we go. 2, 3, 4. None else could heal all our souls' diseases, singing, no, not one. No, not one. There we are. Key of G. That's all you gotta do. Put that capo on. All right, last little section here. Let's look at our chorus. We're coming into the chorus. We're gonna play in the key of B. This is gonna raise it up even more. In the key of B, what chord shape are we going to use? Think about it. If it's B on our chord chart, we go half a step up, which is C, and that's the chord shape we're gonna use. So, and if you know number system and Cage, you're gonna be thinking, oh, if I'm playing a C chord shape, it's sort of like I'm thinking in the key of C. So chord shapes that work in the key of C are like a C chord shape, an F chord shape, a G chord shape, A minor chord shape. So we're gonna be using those. And if we turn them into numbers, right? C is the 1, F is the 4, G is the 5, A minor is the 6. And we can see in the key of B here that we've got B, all right, which is like the 1. And then we've got E, which is like the 4 chord. Back to the 1 chord, B. We've got A flat minor, which is like the 6 chord. And then G flat, which is our 5 chord. So if you know number system, that's how you would convert it right there. So let's do it. So B chord is gonna be a C chord shape. So here we go, 2, ready, and. Jesus knows all about our struggles. You're gonna play an F chord shape to create an E chord, okay? And we can play like an F sus 2 major 7 or something comparable to that where I'm using my thumb for the bass note. Our struggles, and then back to our C chord shape. He will guide till then A minor chord shape for A flat minor. Day is, and then G flat, we just take that flat off and make a G chord shape. Done. So let's play that again. Now this would be like a female key, right? This is real high for me, obviously. So here we go, C chord shape, 2. Ready, and Jesus knows all about our struggles. 1 beat of E. He will guide till the day is done. Awesome, that's definitely a female key. Singing way up there, right? Cool, let's play that line again, but in a different key. So if we were actually gonna play the key of C, which is a standard key, put that capo on, 1st fret, and then play a C chord. Everything's shifted up, the dots are shifted a little. Remember, that 3rd finger goes in what is now the 3rd fret. It's technically the 4th fret, but because our capo's on, it's like it's the 3rd fret. Play a C chord shape. Let's do it again, 2. Ready, it's gonna be even higher, 2. Ready, and Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. Woo. That's right. Jesus knows about that struggle right there. It's way up there. That's how you play in the key of C. Awesome. Great. Now let's play the last line of our chorus. It goes back to sort of repeating, there's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. Except now we're going to change the key to the key of F. Now remember I said that the key of F and the key of B flat, even though we've gone to E flat tuning, there's still not an easy way to play big open chords in these keys, even though we've gone to E flat. And it's the same, when we're in standard tuning, it's hard to play F or B flat either. So there's just not an easy solution there. However, we can make it easy by using our capo, putting it on the 2nd fret, and now we've got options for playing it. And this is where caged method comes in handy. If you know caged method, we're basically applying exactly caged method to this. And you gotta know number system a little bit to do this. So you gotta think in the key of F, which we're playing in, we got to figure out the numbers here. So F is the 1 chord, B flat is the 4, and C is the 5. Okay, and what we're gonna do is by putting the capo on the 2nd fret, this 2nd fret, since we've gone down to E flat, right? An open string is an E flat, the 1st fret would be E, and then the 2nd fret is now an F note. And so we're gonna put the capo directly on the 2nd fret and play an E chord shape to give us an actual F chord. This note on my low E is an F note. If you go to a keyboard, play an F, it's gonna be this exactly. So that's our bass note, and we're gonna make an E chord shape and think in the key of E to allow us to play in the actual key of F. It's just caged method, okay? So here we go. We're gonna play the 1, 4, which is A, and then the 5 chord, which is a B chord shape here. All right, so let's go ahead and play it. We've already played these chord shapes in the key of E flat and E, right? So here we go, 2, ready, and there's not a friend like the 4 chord, lowly Jesus, back to the 1 there. No, not 5 chord, 1, no, not 1, back to our 1 chord. There we go. And that is how you would play in the key of F while we're tuned to E flat, as you would put that capo on the 2nd fret and just use your caged method. Okay? How would we play in B flat, the last one? Again, capo's on the 2nd fret. The key of B flat is this. B flat is the 1 chord, E flat is the 4 chord, and F is the 5 chord. And the key that we're going to think in caged method is the key of A. And why is that? Well, when we play an A chord, our bass note here, the root note that everything's based off of, needs to be B flat. And of course, since we're tuned down half a step, our open note is A flat, our 1st fret would be A, and then our 2nd fret is gonna be B flat. And that's why we put the capo directly on the 2nd fret and then think in the key of A. So A is our 1 chord, and it's gonna correspond with B flat. D, or D chord shape, is gonna be our 4 chord, which corresponds with E flat. And then an E chord shape is our 5 chord in the key of A, and it's gonna correspond with the F chord here on the chart. So here we go, let's play an A chord, and we'll finish out this chorus here. So 2, ready, and there's not a friend like the lowly lead, Jesus. No, not one. 5 chord, right? No, not one. And then end on that 1 chord. Awesome. Well, that is how you play in E flat tuning. That's a lot of different options showing you. Now, I didn't cover every single key, but having covered that much, that should give you all the concepts you need to play in any key that you encounter. So the last thing I want to talk about in our lesson today is what are you going to do if you find a chord chart that is written in a non-standard key and it's just too much for your brain to have to transpose on the fly while leading worship, while you're also thinking about, the transition to the next song, the dynamic levels, and is the preacher coming up to, transition us into communion, all that stuff. That's a lot to think about, especially if you're in if your chord chart's written in a non-standard key, but it's in sharps and you're in E flat tuning. That can be a lot for your brain, and you don't want to have to think about that. So what you can do is this. You can make your chord chart so that it is in the key that you're thinking in with the chord shapes, right? So that you can just look at your chord chart, play those chord shapes, but it's gonna be in the right key. So how do I do that? Well, I've made a chord chart, and I'm actually gonna put up on the screen here an actual chord chart I use, right? For no, not one. So what you'll notice is that in the top right-hand corner of every chord chart I use, it always has the key. Through my program that I use, OnSong, it always puts the key up in the top corner that the song is charted in. Well, it's in the key of E, right? But because I'm in E flat tuning, what I've done is I've scratched out the key of E and I've written E flat below it to let me know that the actual key I'm playing in is E flat, but I'm going to be thinking using E chord shapes. And that's how I make sure that I know the actual key and that I can also play the song without having to try and transpose in my mind. The chords are already the chord shapes I need to use. And then if I'm talking to my band or I'm needing to know exactly what the key is, I've made sure that in the top right-hand corner, I've actually written the real key that it's in. And that's what I do whenever I'm tuning E flat, which is pretty often. Probably 50% of the time, maybe even a little more, I am playing in E flat when I'm leading worship, just because I love to play in non-standard keys, especially the key of B. I love using a C chord shape for the key of B. You just get it's so full and meaty, And I also love the key of E flat. I love playing it a little lower in a lot of worship sets. So on my chord charts often, like let's say if I'm playing in the key of B, how would it look? Well, I would change my chord chart to the key of C, right? So that all my chord shapes are correct, like C and F. And so I'm not having to transpose in my mind, but then I scratch out at the top and I put that this is actually the key of B, just so that I don't confuse myself or other members of the band. And so that's how I do it. And so with a little practice, you can start getting this down. I encourage you, don't shy away from E flat, but in your practice time, just get that down. And if you're on a worship team and a worship leader sends out charts and it's in one of these keys, sit down with it, make it happen. I highly encourage you to get a chord chart program for your computer or your tablet so that you can just change the chords on the fly. You can put it whatever key it's in, and then of course draw on top of it and put actually the correct key that it is when you're playing in E flat tuning. So, all right, well, have fun with this powerful tool of E flat tuning.